On this Sunday night, the investigation into the Lytton fire. Did the spark from a train lead to the disaster in BC?
The fire was underneath the train.
A witness reveals what he saw. Cross-border limits lifted, what you need to know. America celebrates July 4th, even with the dangers of the variant. Plus, the Kahnawake First Nation makes history with a new Grand Chief. The significance of this election.
Global National with Robin Gill.
Good evening and thank you for joining us. We begin tonight in British Columbia, where crews are working tirelessly to contain wildfires across the province. There are more than 170 fires burning in BC. 13 of them are being monitored closely because of their threat to public safety. And for the next 2 weeks, the Canadian Armed Forces will be helping with air support. But the focus tonight is very much on the fire that devastated the village of Lytton. Paul Haysom joins us from the checkpoint outside Lytton. And Paul, what's the situation there right now?
Robin, a steady stream of emergency vehicles have been entering the community of Lytton after it was decimated by fire. A fire that is still burning and moving north. The province's wildfire service says crews are making some progress on the Lytton Creek fire, though it is still considered out of control. Investigators have yet to confirm what caused this catastrophic blaze.
We are beginning that investigation as soon as it's safe for our people to get in there.
There are reports a CN train sparked flames as it passed by Lytton late Wednesday afternoon during a searing heat wave. This couple says they spotted that train with flames underneath as it continued on the tracks to the nearby community of Boston Bar.
Oh, it's the train on fire.
Gary Phelps and his wife alerted fire officials and then went back to the scene to find a much more serious situation.
When we went by originally, it was a very small fire. And by the time we got back, it was fully engulfed. And then the train started to catch on fire, and it was carrying wood and that kind of stuff. And the train was fully engulfed.
Global News cannot independently confirm those details, though there was a fire crew and a CN vehicle spotted at the scene. In a statement to Global News, CN said it will offer its full assistance to help authorities identify the causes of this tragic event. The BC Coroner Service was finally able to enter Lytton on Saturday, confirming the deaths of 2 people. It will likely be some time yet before residents are able to survey the damage for themselves. A provincial order has restricted public entry into the fire zone. Violating that order could result in an $1,150 fine. There are a dozen other fires of note in the province and about 20 areas under evacuation order or alert, though much of southeastern BC is affected with all of the smoke filling the sky. Environment Canada has issued air quality alerts for the region because the smoke is so dense and it will continue to build over the next 24 to 48 hours. And wildfire smoke is starting to fill the sky here where we are south of Lytton, which is likely from other hotspots that are flaring up, and it speaks to how quickly this situation can change. Robin?
Paul Haysom near Lytton, BC. Thanks, Paul. In just a few hours, cross-border travel will become a little easier. As of midnight, fully vaccinated Canadians won't need to quarantine when they return home from international travel. Abigail Beeman breaks down what you need to know before you head out on a summer vacation.
The Canada Border Services Agency is beefing up staff at crossings prepared for an influx of travelers when the rules change at 12:01 Monday morning.
There could be, some impacts to the time it takes across the border, and we'd invite people to be patient.
If you're a Canadian or otherwise exempt from restrictions and you're fully vaccinated by a Health Canada approved jab, you'll be able to skip the hotel quarantine and the full 14-day quarantine, as well as the day 8 test. You still need to provide proof of a negative PCR test and take another when you arrive. You have to enter the test result and proof of vaccination into a new version of the ArriveCan app, downloadable at 12:01 as well. Any unvaccinated children traveling with you still need to quarantine at home for 14 days, but can skip the hotel.
If you haven't been able to travel up until now and you weren't able to travel and enter Canada on July 4th, that doesn't change. On July 5th, those restrictions remain and you still can't come into Canada.
Mentally, it was affecting us mostly. Like the pandemic is being there on one layer and the other layer, like not being able to reunite.
Bashir Amin is a Syrian refugee living in Montreal, a temporary resident ineligible for a visit by his partner of 5 years, Chloe Bordewick, in Boston.
I've been fully vaccinated for months. I'm like ready to go pick up any time now. And every month we've changed our plans again and again and again. It's disrupted our work. It's disrupted our mental health. It's disrupted, as I said, our ability to plan for a future together. And that's been really devastating.
Frustrated, too, that the original metric of 75% for a first dose and 20% for a second didn't move the needle.
If the goalposts continually move, faith in public health becomes eroded, and public health requires the trust of Canadians to be effective.
The prospect of having a bunch of people coming up to Pearson Airport, let's say in Toronto, and not having to quarantine, and then have Canadian citizens who are only singly vaccinated, because we're behind Americans on that, having to quarantine. And that just strikes me as politics and not science.
We will be looking at how this works before we open up to next steps.
As for Canadians looking to travel to the U.S. for a quick trip like cross-border shopping, that's still a no-go. The American land entry rules barring non-essential travel haven't changed either. Now all eyes are on July 21st, the next shot at a broader border reopening for both sides. Robin?
Abigail Beeman in Ottawa. Thanks, Abigail. In the U.S., Americans are celebrating Independence Day with a little more freedom this year. President Joe Biden's goal of having 70% of adults vaccinated with at least one shot by July 4th was so close. But the White House is still urging anyone who hasn't been immunized to do so because of concerns over the Delta variant. Jennifer Johnson reports.
Americans are riding a wave of freedom, celebrating the country's independence and that they're free from COVID-19 lockdowns.
After a whole year of following the rules, not going out, and now we're finally safe enough to be out, see other people.
July 4th, 2021 is a stark contrast to 2020, with 2.2 million people traveling on planes Friday, the highest since the pandemic began.
We didn't really expect it to be all this crowded.
Friends and families are reuniting, optimistic the worst of the pandemic is behind them. 2/3 of American adults have gotten at least one dose of a vaccine. But a new poll shows 74% of those who are unvaccinated are unlikely to ever get immunized.
If you look at the number of deaths, about 99.2% of them are unvaccinated. Most all of these are avoidable and preventable.
Experts say full Food and Drug Administration approval rather than the current emergency use of the vaccines might help persuade the reluctant.
A lot of individuals that don't want to yet get the vaccine view it as experimental. And they cite the fact that this is still under emergency use as a big reason why they want to wait and see.
18 of the 20 states with the lowest vaccination rates are led by Republican governors, many who supported former President Donald Trump, who often downplayed the virus. Some state leaders are emphasizing the importance of getting vaccinated as the Delta variant spreads.
In our state, which is concerning, hospitalizations are rising again. We have 89% of those over the age of 65, so we feel really good about that, and our death rates have come down because of that, but we desperately need more.
With COVID-19 still killing over 9,700 Americans in June, experts say be wary, this virus is still among us. Jennifer Johnson, Global News, Washington.
Many parts of Canada are reaching vaccination milestones, turning the corner towards a somewhat normal summer. But in other countries, the Delta variant is stoking fresh fears of a COVID-19 flare-up. Take Europe. 63% of the population there still hasn't had the first dose. And as Ross Lord reports, it's a race between the vaccine and the variant.
With the third wave of COVID-19 petering out in Canada, the narrative is shifting to positive milestones, like Nova Scotia poised to celebrate 1 million vaccine doses administered. But as provinces and the federal government make new rules for international travelers, there are new reminders of why some parts of the world are a long way from returning to normal. The World Health Organization's regional director for Europe says COVID-19 cases in the region are no longer dropping. He warns there will be yet another wave unless people stay disciplined and get vaccinated. About 63% of people in Europe have not had their first dose of vaccine.
Whilst we should all recognize the progress made across most countries in the region, we must also acknowledge that we are by no means out of danger.
Kluge warns an increase in socializing, travel, and large sports events could cause outbreaks of the fast-spreading Delta variant. Already, Russia is reporting its highest COVID numbers since January, more than 25,000 new cases on Sunday, driven by the Delta variant. There were 5 consecutive days of record-high deaths, including almost 700 on Saturday. Some countries are feeling more confident. In the United Kingdom, the Wimbledon tennis tournament will allow maximum capacity crowds from the quarterfinals onward. The UK government is planning to ease pandemic restrictions on July 19th based on the success of its vaccination campaign.
I don't particularly want to wear a mask. I don't think a lot of people enjoy doing it. We will be moving into a phase, though, where these will be matters of personal choice.
By contrast, people in Brazil took to the streets in the thousands, demanding the resignation of President Jair Bolsonaro. They accused Bolsonaro of mismanaging the pandemic, allowing COVID-19 to run rampant and kill more than 500,000 people. Scenes that seem to validate Canada's regulated approach to COVID-19 and step-by-step reopening. Ross Lord, Global News.
In Japan, crews are searching for survivors after a mudslide hit a town southwest of Tokyo. So far, 19 people have been rescued, but rain is hampering efforts. More than 1,000 people, including members of Japan's military, have been brought in to help with the search. At least 2 people are dead and more than 20 are missing. Yesterday's slide sent a tsunami-like torrent of mud into dozens of buildings and vehicles. The Philippines has been hit with the worst military disaster in decades. An Air Force C-130 plane crashed while trying to land, killing at least 42 troops and 3 civilians. Witnesses say the aircraft missed the runway. Several people were seen jumping out of the plane before it hit the ground in a fiery explosion. 96 people were on board. Many were troops who had just undergone basic training. In Florida, demolition crews are racing to bring down a section of the collapsed condo to open up new areas for rescue teams. It's been 11 days since the catastrophe at the Champlain Towers. 24 bodies have been recovered, but 121 people are still unaccounted for. The search was paused on Saturday so specialists could put explosives into a section of the building that is expected to be demolished at any moment. Tropical storm Elsa is making its way towards southern Florida. The state could begin feeling the effects tomorrow. Elsa was downgraded from a hurricane after damaging thousands of homes in Barbados and killing at least 3 people in the Caribbean. A settlement has been reached to release the container ship that blocked the Suez Canal for 6 days back in March. The details are yet to be revealed, but the Ever Given will be allowed to sail away on July 7th. The Suez Canal Authority had seized the Japanese-owned ship over a demand for compensation. The blockage sparked a supply crisis that cost the global economy billions of dollars. Coming up, who is this First Nation Grand Chief and what does she hope to accomplish? Police in Kingston, Ontario were called out early this morning to break up a large party. Roughly 300 people were at a home in the city's University District. Outdoor social gatherings in Ontario remain capped at 25 people, and indoor gatherings are limited to just 5. So far, no charges have been laid, but the police are still investigating. The Mohawks of Kahnawake have made history. The community, about 10 kilometers south of Montreal, has elected a new leader to replace late Grand Chief Joseph Norton. And as Phil Carpenter explains, for the first time, the council will be led by a woman.
Kahnawake has voted for change. On Saturday, the Mohawk community on Montreal's South Shore voted for Gasanahawe Sky Deer as their first woman Grand Chief. She replaces longtime Grand Chief Joe Norton, who passed away last August.
I think that it's fabulous that they have a woman now chief. That's in the history.
For many in the community, her win, both as a woman and a member of the LGBTQ2S community, is monumental. Mike DeLille, former Grand Chief, who was just re-elected Saturday as one of 11 council chiefs, says it's a sign the community is evolving.
It's a great achievement. I mean, it's a sign of the times in terms of change. We are a conservative community by nature, and to take this step forward, I think, is large.
Skydeer isn't new to politics, having served 12 years as a council chief. She wasn't available for interviews Sunday, but on Saturday she said one of her priorities would be looking at governance.
Finding a way to return to a governing structure, that's more reflective of who we are as First Nations people.
She underscored the need for governments to do more to support hers and other First Nations communities.
This isn't a handout, this is what's owed to us, and it's a drop in the bucket compared to what we should be getting.
Another priority, to help guide the community through the trauma of residential schools.
Our community right now is in a very sad state with all of the recent discoveries of these children across Turtle Island. And that, right now what we need is healing.
Her father, who observes traditional rituals, says his daughter follows in his footsteps. She speaks the language, for instance. He believes she is well placed to not only help unite her village, but to help build bridges between it and the outside communities.
My advice to my daughter would be to never come from a place of fear, ever.
Skydeer steps into her new role as Grand Chief Monday. Phil Carpenter, Global News, Kahnawake.
Still ahead, did you feel sick after your COVID-19 shots? We look into the different reactions. More than 34% of eligible Canadians are now fully vaccinated, and some people have experienced side effects. Others have felt nothing at all. So does a lack of reaction mean less protection? Our health reporter Jamie Maracher is looking into this tonight.
For months, Amanda Ferguson, who is immunocompromised, has been part of a study out of Toronto Sinai Health monitoring her COVID-19 antibody levels post-vaccine.
I wanted that sign that my body and my immune system was working. And other than a little bit of fatigue, I didn't really feel much.
Living with Crohn's, that lack of symptoms after her first Pfizer shot had her worried she wasn't building immunity. But her results gave her good news.
16 days roughly past the first shot, then you saw, oh my gosh, I'm protected.
Doctors say reactions to the COVID-19 vaccines range. Some people feel slight soreness at the injection site. Others suffer from muscle aches, headaches, and fever.
I don't think that people who haven't had this really robust reaction after vaccine need to be concerned at all.
And while most experts agree, Earl Brown, a professor of virology at the University of Ottawa, notes immunity is linked to inflammation.
The vaccine has to stimulate inflammation that your body responds to. So you don't have to feel unwell, but you have to have an activated immune system from your vaccine.
Brown also points out different vaccines can prompt different reactions.
It is a dance when you're vaccinating, getting a vaccine which will stimulate the immune response sufficiently, but not excessively.
After her second dose of Pfizer, Ferguson says she was left with a sore arm and more anxiety as she awaited her levels.
The results came back loud and clear that not only I had a good amount after the first shot, but then I had a really good number after the second.
Peace of mind, she says, and proof the size of the reaction doesn't equal the amount of protection. Jamie Maracher, Global News, Toronto.
Up next, this dog knows how to heal. We'll tell you about the four-legged therapy for hospital staff. A canine companion in Calgary is scoring points with hospital staff. Tucker has been boosting the spirits of those working on the front lines during one of the most stressful times in history. Here's Lauren Pullen on the furry form of therapy that's working wonders.
In emergency rooms from coast to coast, doctors expect the unexpected. But this was different.
We were not only at war with this COVID virus in the emergency department, but we as healthcare workers could be the casualties.
A frontline fight with stress like never before.
We lost a lot of sleep, not knowing what was going to happen. We never knew what was around the corner.
For healthcare workers and those needing critical care during the pandemic, there are days that are simply overwhelming. But just when it all seems to be too much.
It's kind of like having a movie star walk in.
It's magic.
some unconditional love when it's needed the most.
Tucker was my retirement present. He's my best friend.
Larry Gertzen wanted to share some of that four-legged affection, so for the past 4 years, the pair has volunteered at one of Calgary's busiest hospitals. And now,
everyone knows Tucker by name.
Want to go visit? Armed with his own official badge, the 7-year-old English lab roams the hospital halls, gladly greeting healthcare workers and visiting patients for some quality time and stress relief.
Just a way for for us to kind of escape, even if it's for the 5 minutes of getting a pet in with Tucker.
Let's go, quick!
Tucker is the high point of my week.
During the height of the pandemic, the hospital had to press pause on the visits, but it was one of the first volunteer programs brought back when it was safe, and for good reason. Canadian research shows
that patients across the board feel better when the dog is around. Even the pain level seemed to moderate just by having the dog there.
And even for Larry,
it's just a good feeling. And I know it helps me.
A little compassion, care, and even a keepsake.
And of course, we give them a trading card. And I go through a lot of these.
And in a time and place where smiles aren't always easy to come by, that little bit of Tucker TLC makes all the difference. Good boy. Are you a good boy? Yeah. Lauren Pullen, Global News, Calgary.
What a sweet story. That is Global National for this Sunday night. I'm Robin Gill. Tonight, your Canada is Deep Cove in North Vancouver. We'd love to see your corner of the country, so please keep sending your photos to viewers@globalnational.com. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next weekend. Have a great night.